Well, hello, and welcome to tonight's Alabama adventure. Tonight we make a little journey back into the shadow regions, where reality and the supernatural mingle. You decide what these stories should be classified. I classify all of them as the unexplained. So, anyway, without further ado,
And now, from the tail end of the Appalachian mountain chain in the heart of the South, this is Alabama Adventures.
a few weeks ago I had a friend of mine to come by the house. He wanted to check on me to see how I was doing these days, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. I had been several years since I had seen him. Used to work with him many years ago. We built houses and did all type of carpenter work and that type of stuff back in those days, and we were always good friends. We used to go out and party pretty hard together on the weekends sometime. Anyway, like I said, it was the first time I had seen him in a long time, and he had something that he wanted to tell me and talk to me about, something that he thought was very unusual that had happened to him one night. So let me kind of give you a little bit of background on what happened to him that night, and then I'll tell you the story. A little bit of background would be that at this particular time in his life, he was going through a lot of difficult times. He had had some deaths in his family. He and his wife had gotten divorced a little earlier. He had lost his house to a fire. Not Alrighty, well there was our first battery failure, and that's why I'm coming back on now. It took me a minute to get the camera back on. It just clicked off. I think the batteries are saying that they're okay and fully charged. But as you know, a lot of times when we start doing these and I start talking about ghosts or something like we're going to talk about tonight, the unexplained, which is something that I don't guess we have done before on here, our camera goes to dying. And a lot of people that come in here, some of the nurses and that type of stuff, have trouble with their computers, their telephones and that type of stuff. I don't know what it is here. It could be some type of vortex or something here. I don't know for sure. But a lot of electronic stuff we have trouble with here. Second battery failure. So whoever my little ghost in here tonight is messing with the camera, I would appreciate it if you would leave it alone and let me get this recorded. Because if it takes a month, I'm going to sit here and do it. Whether you want to keep turning it off or what you want to keep doing. But anyway, he had a lot of bad luck had come to this guy, and he just decided that so much had happened in his life here in the last few weeks, few months, that he just couldn't take it anymore, that he was ready to end his life. And that's what he tried to do on this particular night, 3 different times. And let me tell you how it all started out. Now, here where I live, we have a train that comes through, not the same train, but we have trains that come through. One comes through at 11 o'clock every night, and one comes through at midnight. And I'm sure there are others that come on during the night or may come earlier. But this was the 2 trains that he was looking for, at least the one at 11, or maybe if he didn't catch it, he wanted to get the one at 12. What he decided to do, there was a place that he knew was kind of off on a little lonely dirt road where the train track come across. There was no arms that came down to block traffic when the train come through. There was not even any lights on this particular crossing. So what he did, he went there. He got there about 10:30, and he decided to just pull onto the train track and let the train hit him. That should kill him, and that's what he had planned to do, was to kill himself that night. So anyway, he pulled up there about 10:30, and he sat there and he sat there and he waited on the 11 o'clock train to come through, which is a freight train. I guess that's about all that's on tracks around here now is a freight train, but they're usually running on pretty fast, and they're a pretty long train. So anyway, that should get the job done that night. And anyway, what he did, he sat there and sat there. The train never came. The train never came. He looked at his watch, and it was already after 11. It was about 11:20, and the train hadn't come. Well, he knew another one was supposed to come through there about midnight, so that was about another 30, 40-minute wait. So that's what he done. He kept sitting there waiting on the train, waiting on the train. For some reason, these two trains, not just one, 2 trains never showed up that night. And at 1 o'clock that morning, when he knew this midnight train was not coming through, he decided that he would try something else, and that's what he did. So now, when he had something in mind, he was not one of those people that would give up easy. So he left the train track that night, and went back to his barn. He has a pretty good sized little farm, and in his barn there was some hose and some old rags and towels and that type of stuff. So what he did, he went out into the middle of his pasture, and he put this hose into the exhaust pipe of his truck, and taped it up good so it wouldn't fall out, and it would be secure in there to keep all the fumes coming out the pipe the way he wanted. And he ran the pipe over to the passenger, I believe the passenger window. He rolled it down just a little ways and stuffed these rags into the crack, and was going to just end it all that way with vehicle fumes coming off the motor, which will certainly take you out. So anyway, that's what he did. It took him a little while to get back out in the pasture after he went home and got his pipe and that type of stuff. He, as I said, fixed it up to the exhaust pipe, ran it around, and it came in the window, and he stuffed these rags into the crack there in the window where it had to be rolled down a little bit to bring the pipe in. All right, he gets all that done, and everything's secure, and the vehicle should be airtight. And he gets in his pickup truck to crank it up so the motor can run. And he'll go to sleep, and then that's the way that he will take his life that night. So anyway, what he does, he goes back around, he gets in the truck, and the truck's run fine that night. It run up to the railroad track, ran back home out in the middle of the pasture. So anyway, he turns the key on to try to get the truck to crank, and the truck will not crank. And he sits there and sits there time after time, turning the key, and the truck will turn over. Okay, now still having some trouble with the camera going off. But anyway, while what I need to back up just a little bit, and I was almost about to leave something out, and it's kind of what makes this unexplained. Now, while he was out in the pasture hooking up all of this hose pipe to the exhaust pipe and running it in the window, he heard the train whistle, and the train come through about an hour or so late. It was getting around maybe 1 or 1:30 now, and he actually heard the train come through that he'd been sitting down there for about 2 hours waiting on. But anyway, now he was up in the pasture trying something else. So anyway, I'm sort of having a rough time doing this video tonight. My little ghost is giving me a rough time in here turning the camera off. And that causes me to forget where I'm at in the story. But anyway, let's try to get back to it. He tried several times to crank the truck, and it just would not crank. Now, as I said, the motor would turn over, but it just would not fire. The motor would not crank up. So anyway, he sat there for a little bit trying, and he was the kind of person that kept a pistol in the glove box with him all the time for snakes or something like that. It was just an older model pistol that he always kept in there, and if it got scratched up or marked up, it really didn't matter. It was just a work gun. So he decided that he would use it. So he gets out and he pulls the hose out of the window and throws it in the back end of the truck, and comes back around and sets back down under the steering wheel, and reaches in the glove box and gets this .357 pistol. All right, it's going to take a little bit of nerve to pull the trigger, a little bit more than just sitting on a train track or sitting there waiting for something to happen while the motor's running. It takes a little bit of nerve to actually pull that trigger. So that's what he did. He finally got up enough nerve to pull it. He thought about it and thought about it. He put the gun up to his head, and he pulled the trigger, and it snapped. Did not fire. He had checked it. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but he had checked it, and the gun was fully loaded. It had 6 rounds in the cylinder, and it was fully loaded, ready to go. So as I said, he pulled it one time, and it did not fire. So he sat there a little bit and thought about it over, and got up his nerve again. This time he put the pistol in his mouth and was going to shoot himself that way. So he finally cocked the trigger one more time, and he sat there. He cocked the hammer one more time, and he sat there for a little bit before he could pull the trigger. But he finally got up his nerve, and he pulled the trigger, and the gun clicked again. So with 3 attempts that night and nothing had happened, he just tossed the gun down on the seat and got out of the truck and walked back to his house, which was about somewhere between a half a mile, 3/4 mile through a pasture that he had to walk at night, and dew and everything was on the grass out there, so his feet and everything got pretty wet going back home. But anyway, that's what happened to him that night. Now he went on to bed, and he knew something wasn't right. Something was going on, that he had attempted this 3 times within just a few hours, and he was still alive. So something was going on. But anyway, he went back down there the next morning to the truck, and as I said earlier, while he was hooking up the hose and everything, he heard the train go by. So why was the train hour or so late that night coming with the first one? An hour or so late coming by that night. Something was watching over him, I think. But anyway, he said he got in the truck and said he thought he would try it one more time. He didn't know what he was going to do. He guessed he was going to go get his tractor and hook to it and pull it back up to the house and work on it. But said he sat down inside the truck, reached over and got a hold of the keys and turned it, and said it didn't turn over twice, and the truck fired right up. So he was just sort of disgusted and didn't know what to think about things. And he said he got over there and drove the truck back home. And of course, the pistol was still laying on the seat there with him that he had tried to use that night also. And said when he pulled up into his driveway right next to the garage and his barn, said he just reached over and got the pistol and held it over his head and pulled the trigger one more time over his head to see what else would happen, and said the gun shot. And so anyway, a little later on that day, he checked the gun to see what might be wrong with it, and all he could find wrong with it was nothing. That actually these first 2 bullets had been hit by the firing pin and should have fired, but what's the odds on 2 bullets out of the same box misfiring or not firing, whatever you want to call it? But he said that he knew something had to be watching over him or something that night. So what do you think? You tell me your thoughts on that. 3 attempts and 3 fails in one night at 3 different things. To me, let you know that a guardian angel or divine intervention or something was watching over him, that it certainly was not his time to go that night. So now let's get on to the next tale. Okay, now for our next story, this comes from 2 of my very good friends. Here a while back, while I was in the hospital, the man who we'll call Mike passed away. He had COPD and some other health problems. And anyway, he was in the hospital and he passed away. And his wife called me and told me what had happened and everything. Like I said, they were very good friends. Still are very good friends. As a matter of fact, they had a little small farm. And years ago, I used to help as much as I could over there, like with their dogs and that type of stuff, and keeping grass cut and trimmed and little stuff like that along. But we just always been friends as long as we had known each other. But anyway, what happened, as I said, Mike passed away while he was in the hospital. Okay, this was like on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And anyway, they had the funeral for him the following Sunday afternoon at a little local church over there. And anyway, it was just pretty much normal, and nothing out of the way happened at the funeral or anything like that. But as I said, he was buried on Sunday. Okay, now the following Monday morning, his wife, who we'll call a Cat, short for Kathy, but anyway, there's what we'll call her. And she was sitting at the table eating breakfast this next Monday morning. Now, where their dining room table is, it faces a large, what I call a picture window. A very large window. It's got about 3 window frames in it, or whatever you want to call it. It's a very large window where you can see all of their backyard while you're sitting there eating breakfast or lunch or supper or whatever you want to eat. Okay, she's sitting there eating, as I said, the following Monday morning. And, of course, she's got him on her mind sometimes and trying to cope with a recent death and that type of stuff. But anyway, as she's looking out the window, this very large bird, this very large black bird, she thought was a crow. Lands in the yard out there. And it just stands there for a few minutes, but it's looking in the window at her, directly at her. And this bird then begins to walk across the area of the picture window in the backyard, long ways to the house. And as it walks, it doesn't look forward to see where it's going. The bird just walks. It doesn't hop like a bird does a lot of times. It's just walking like somebody, and it's got its head turned toward her as it walked this way, facing the window and her. She said it turned its head completely, a 90-degree turn, and seemed as if it was looking at her all the way down this picture window, long ways in the backyard. And when it gets to the end of where it's going to turn around, there's exactly what it does. It turns around and it keeps its eye on her. And she said she felt as if this bird was looking her directly in the eye. And it turns back around and it's still got his head turned at a 90-degree turn looking at her. And he walks past the window again. The bird does this 3 times and she keeps looking at it. It's a little bit larger than a average crow that you see. And she said she believed it was a raven, was what she thought it was. And of course, now you know ravens have always been known to be a mystical type bird that possess powers and this type of stuff. Okay, it did this 3 times and then it flew away. All right, she sits there every morning, a lot of times at lunch or supper at this same place. Nothing happens the rest of the week until the following Monday morning, about the same time. She's sitting there eating breakfast again, and this raven lands in the yard once again and does the same thing. It looks at her through the window, turns its head from its body. It doesn't look where it's walking in the yard out there. It just has its eyes fixed on her. He walks back and forth the window 3 times, and he flew away. And that was the only time that happened. That was been several months ago now. And she says the bird has not returned. So now, what do you think that is? Was that a totem? Was that one of Mike's totem animal? I'm not sure if he had any Indian ancestry or not. But I guess if the animals take up with you or whatever, that you will certainly have a totem animal. But I did do a little research on crows and ravens. They are, as I said, a mystical type bird, a very intelligent bird. Crows and ravens have always been known to be very intelligent. So was this bird actually the spirit of her husband come back to check on her? And let her know that he was okay? And did he take the form of this bird so he could fly over into the afterlife, next world, or whatever? You tell me what you think about this story. I would be interested in hearing your comments as well as Kat would too.